Hi, I'm CJ Liu. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we have Robert Rosenbaum, who is the author of Walking the Way, 81 Zen Encounters with the Tao Te Ching. Love this book. And you know what's so cool about this book is that, and welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
Or
Good to be.
Bob. Welcome, Bob. So one of the cool things, I don't know if you got my email, is that the Tao Te Ching has been interpreted by many, many folks, and so you would then, or again, uh, uh, you also actually have your own interpretations. And one of the sources was from my aunt's father, so
Yeah,
that was pretty
that
cool.
was really cool.
John Woo.
Yeah, who did wonderful work. I mean,
Yeah, I
so
was.
many of his translations, there have been many since then, but one still goes back to his work.
Yeah,
Kind
that's
of,
cool.
that's just very sensible.
Yeah,
It fits. It's sweet.
yeah.
That did do good work.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I'm Chinese, and my aunt is also Chinese, is married to a Chinese man, and all of them are not living the way. That's the sad thing. It's hard to do. It's hard to do being raised in this particular culture, living the Wu Wei way. Or
Yes.
is it just Wu Wei? I don't know.
Well, Wu Wei means doing, not doing, or effortless effort. It's translated various terms. So you would say Wu Wei, but the Wu Wei way, yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
it's hard
It's
to do.
very difficult in this culture, which is frenetic,
Hmm.
and it was even difficult in traditional Chinese culture at the time the Tao Te Ching was written. It was the period of warring states, and things were a mess.
Hmm.
Now, I actually find it kind of comforting to think that, well, 2,000 years ago, things were a mess, and we're still here.
Yeah,
And one of the points that the Tao Te Ching makes is we get all excited when things are a mess and we feel like we have to do something. And it says, you
yes.
know, if you just kind of relax and trust and stay kind of simple, things sort of work out.
Do they? See, how do we know that? I guess we wouldn't know that unless we became those things.
Well, that's true. And um, when the Tao says, and when I say things work out, they don't necessarily work out the way we want them to
Right.
at the time. But there's nothing which says the way we want them to work out at the time um, is really the best way. So,
That's
for
true.
example,
Good point.
I mean, just a very simple example. A few months
Yeah.
ago, maybe a year ago now, my daughter had quit one job that she was dissatisfied with and had been looking for work for several months. And just, it was a very, very difficult job market out there
Hmm.
for a 29-year-old
Hmm.
college grad. And she couldn't get a job, couldn't get a job. And then she got a job and she was so excited about it and so excited about it. And she was going to start next Tuesday and it was exactly right. And she called me Monday evening and she said, Dad, I just heard that all of the funding for that job fell through and they said, don't come in for work, there's no job.
Oh no.
And she was crushed. She was crushed.
Right.
And we all thought, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And in fact, what happened was 2 weeks later, she found a different job, which is better. She's working with the homeless and with people who've been recently laid off who don't have much in the way of resources, helping
Right.
them find job training,
Yeah.
basically, which is what she wanted to do. And it all worked out fine. There's actually a famous story about that. You know the good, bad, who knows story?
No,
It's,
tell me. I've never heard this story, and I love
oh,
stories.
it's
Tell me.
okay. So a farmer is wandering around near his home, and he sees a horse.
Hmm.
And the horse is wandering free and doesn't seem to have any owner, so he brings the horse home. And all of his neighbors say, "That's wonderful. That's so great. You've got a horse, and it's a great horse." And the farmer says, "Good, bad, who knows?" So the next day, his son gets on the horse to, work with it. And the horse bucks and it throws him off, and he breaks his leg. And all the farmer's neighbors say, "Oh, that's terrible. Oh, that's awful that your son broke his leg." And the farmer says, "Well, good, bad, who knows?" So the next day, the army comes to town, and they take all the able-bodied young men away, and his son isn't taken because he broke his leg.
Wow.
How many times in your life has something happened where if you look back 10 years later, you go, who would have ever thought that it would turn out that way?
Mm-hmm. Better to say, and that's a wonderful refrain when you're about to go, "Oh no, I lost that job. Oh, I broke my ankle. Oh, I got this horse." To go, good, bad, who
Yeah.
knows?
It,
But what's interesting though is when you did that, it felt like an indifference. It like there's this. It's so interesting
uh,
because there's equanimity, there's indifference, there's acceptance, there's resignation. There are all these like nuances of these things.
yes, yes, that's a really good point.
Because the way you told the story
And
was like, meh.
yeah, that's true. Well, that's my Jewish son
Oi.
from New York. Yeah, who knows? But it's not about indifference because indifference closes you off to life. It's more about acceptance. And you mentioned equanimity. People have a very mistaken idea of what equanimity is. They think it's, "I'm calm, I'm just in this really good state." That's not what equanimity is.
Oh, I've got it all wrong.
Well, equanimity is treating everything equal.
Oh, that
Whatever
I've got it right.
comes.
What does it mean to treat things equal? Like whether the horse is good or bad. So
Well, so instead of indifference, you open your heart to whatever comes, and you open your heart to compassion and joy and kindness. So if something unpleasant happens, you go, "Oh, I'm really upset." I mean, when my daughter told
right.
me about it, I went,
Yeah.
"Oh gosh,
Yes.
oh, you must be so upset.
Yeah.
Oh, gee, how frustrating." I mean,
Right.
'cause she felt really frustrated.
Right.
But in the background, well, who knows how this will
Good
turn
knows
out?
who good, bad, who
Yeah,
knows.
and that's actually kind of wonderful
Yeah.
because it keeps all these other doors open all the time. I mean, we get into problems because we think, if I don't do this right now, that door's going to shut. Well, it might, but at the same time that door is shutting, not only are other doors are opening, shutting, swinging, going up.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, okay, so here's the question. So with the good bad, who knows? So, how and my husband and I have been talking about this a lot. So, how when in the Wu Wei way
Mhm.
is about not applying force. It's just
That's right.
allowing and accepting what is.
That's
So,
correct. I would add, it's when you say allowing and accepting, it sounds like you're separate from it.
wow, good point.
Whereas the Wu Wei is joining with it.
Okay.
Now, when you join with it, you experience the flow of what's happening, and it's a little easier to direct it this way or that way. So it doesn't mean throwing up your hands and doing nothing. It means acting in harmony with full engagement. Now, what's harmony? Well, the more you can let go of a narrow point of view, and most of our narrow points of view are kind of self-centered based on what we fear and what we hope and
Or what we think, or
what we think, that's right, or what we
rules,
feel.
standards. Yep.
And the more you can let go of that and go, right now, what's actually happening?
Hmm.
And and stay with what's actually happening instead of your ideas of what should be happening or shouldn't or you want or don't want, and just go, here's where we are.
Right.
It's very powerful. It puts you at a pivot point where you can turn this way or that way.
Right. Well, you
Or
can't solve the problem if you're going like this.
right, right.
Right.
No, no. So it's certainly not blinding yourself, and it's not indifference or throwing up your hands.
Right.
It's really, Wu Wei sounds very mystical, but it's very practical. It means if you're exercising on a hot, humid day, you go a little slower.
Yeah.
You know?
Or drink water.
Right. You drink water. If you're exercising on a cold day, you start slow and warm up. Otherwise, you're going to pull a tendon.
Okay, I have a question. To make it practical, here's a really interesting situation. I have I have a corporate client. They have a group that, and this is very common. It could be a corporate client or whatever. Then they have two people at work who are not. They're at such interaction that they're not talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're not working together with each other. They blame each other for why the group isn't doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a boss who is responsible for the productivity and efficacy of his group, and he has these two individuals that are not working, and it's affecting the whole group.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right?
It just percolates through the whole group.
Right. So let's use the Wu Wei way.
Mm-hmm.
And suggest a couple of different alternatives to what would someone do in this particular situation. So this is the situation, right? Two people fighting, just
Mm-hmm.
like in China when this was written, right?
Right, right. Well, ideally, I'd go to each of them and say, things have been pretty difficult for you lately, haven't you? You've been feeling upset about a lot of things, right?
Yeah, I'm going to pretend I'm them, just so we can
Okay.
role model this. Yeah,
Okay.
of course they are.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, of course they are
Maybe
because
you need a little break. How would you like to go out to? I have a little cabin in the woods nearby, and I'd like to have a weekend out there. The company will pay for it.
what would happen at this cabin?
Yeah, you could do whatever you wanted.
With the group or just myself to have the weekend in the cabin?
Um, Probably you and maybe some other people. Haven't quite decided yet.
I don't know if I can commit to that unless I
Uh,
know exactly what's happening in this
oh,
cabin. What's the purpose of this
that
cabin?
must be really difficult for you to know. It must be hard working if you need to know exactly what's going to happen when none of us can figure out exactly what's happening in the economy or the company or anything. That must put a lot of tension on you.
Of course it does. Yeah, it puts on tension of everyone.
Hmm. Well, um, are you having any? Is that tension causing you any problems?
Yeah. Well, no, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm supposed to do. It's just that,
Well,
Bob doesn't know
I'm
what
just,
he's doing.
I'm
That's why
just,
we can't get anything done as a group.
I'm just worried about your health if you're feeling tense because you read all this stuff about stress and heart disease and cancer and all of that.
Yeah, I'm totally stressed out. I don't like being in this hostile work environment where Bob is constantly berating me for my work and not saying it's good enough and trying to force me to do whatever he wants to do. I just hate it.
Mm, mm. Well, when you're feeling really stressed, sounds like we need to figure out a way to help you feel less stressed.
I'm fine. I mean, I think we just need to fix Bob.
Ah, well, do you have control of Bob?
Well, no.
I hate to tell you, even though I'm his supervisor, I can't get inside him and flip a switch to fix him.
No, but that's your job. I mean, why don't you fix him? That's your job. You're the one in power. Make him go away or make him stop whatever he's doing. It makes me crazy.
Uh, wouldn't it be nice? I sometimes think it would be nice if we could fix things, but usually I'm pretty careful about fixing things because have you ever tried fixing something? Recently, I got stuck in the snow.
Hmm.
I got stuck in the snow. I was trying out my new all-wheel drive vehicle. And I said, oh, I can go this far. Oh, I can go that far. Oh, it all seems good. And then I went a little too far, and I said, well, I better back up. And as I started to back up, the car started slipping. And I said, well, I know how to fix this. So I got out and I put some sand underneath the tires, and I backed up some more, and the tires spun, and it spun the sand out and turned it into ice. And then I said, well, I still know how to fix this. I can get, a shovel or something and get this in. The more I fixed it, the deeper in it got. And you know what I eventually had to do? It was getting dark out, and I realized I could be stuck out there all night long in sub-zero temperatures. I better walk away from the car and go down to the road and flag down some help. So it took me about a mile or two of walking from the car to get to the main road. And it was interesting because, I was pretty upset. I was upset with the car. I was upset with myself. I was upset with the snow. I mean,
Right.
what was all this? This car should have been able to go through that snow.
Right.
I don't know why they advertise it as all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
By the time I'd walked 2 miles, the main thing I was concerned about was just getting a good meal. And the people who picked me up, can I tell you about the people who picked me up?
Yeah.
They actually had 2 young children in the car. And I thought to myself, how nice to be, out in a remote area and to feel confident enough about yourself that you could pick somebody up and the reason those people could do it is they told me, they were military people and they felt very confident about their ability to handle anything which happened, didn't matter what was coming at them, they could handle it no matter what the other person did. Oh, I don't know how we got onto that, but
You were saying
let's
that.
get back to you in a little bit. I need to go to this other meeting right now, but I am really worried about your stress levels, and I just want to let you know that I'm concerned about you.
Right.
And
Okay, interesting. So you actually got me to the point of, well, first of all, you told me a little bit of a story. So my unconscious is going, why did you tell me that story? And I know I'm trying to figure out, why did you tell me that story? I'm pissed off at my employee. I'm blaming the person. And just like the person in the snow was blaming the snow and the car and all these different things. And they took a long walk until they got to a car. And someone was there to help.
Right.
Which is you and the manager, right? Because you're like, why are you in this stressful situation? You're saying, can I please help? And then to know that wasn't it nice that this person, you, in this case the manager, is willing to help.
Yeah.
Is that the moral of the story, Bob? Did I get it right?
Well, it reminds me of a person I saw once when I was still working as a therapist, was having problems with his boss. And his boss just was doing this and doing that, and he was all stressed out. And I said to this person, do you feel like your boss listens to you? Because, no, he doesn't listen to me. That's the problem. He just doesn't listen to me. Yeah. Well, it'd be really good if we could teach him how to listen, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's what he needs. He needs to learn how to listen. Well, I could send him to a seminar or something, but, those seminars don't work all that well. You know what's the best way of teaching someone to listen? The person usually goes, well, what? I said, well, how do you teach your kids to listen or anyone to listen? You model the behavior.
Ah, nice.
So, I don't know, your boss might be pretty dumb. I mean, they might not get it for a while, but do you think you could model listening with your boss? Or would they just totally,
right,
go over their head?
Right.
I mean, and then the person, is in a position where they kind of want to say, oh, I can do that,
Right. Interesting.
Your boss might make it very difficult for you because they don't listen. It might be very frustrating. I mean, how are you going to be able to maintain it in the face of that?
Interesting.
And, the person came back. So I coached him in how to listen a little bit.
Oh, love it. And because that's
he
usually the
came back
problem, isn't it?
Later, and he said, it's really interesting. Boss has been much better lately.
Because that is one of the fundamental differences. That's one of the crux. I've done mediation. And the crux of the problem is that people don't listen. And
Oh, yeah.
it's twofold. It's the thing that you mentioned in one of the Tao Te Ching. Is it passage? Is what you say? What are
The
these
first is the passage.
verses? Yeah, about being so fixed in our ways that even when we do hear, we don't truly hear. But I do think that that is one of when you when you have a conflict, it's usually people aren't listening or they're not hearing because it goes outside of their model of reality, so they just don't accept anything.
Yes.
Um, so, so let's actually go back to the original question, which is Wu Wei. In this particular situation, you're a boss, and
Hmm.
so what I'm hearing you say is go into what's happening. You know, meet with each of these individuals to get a sense of what is it that you even have to accept, right? What is the
Hmm.
situation that I have to accept? Now, in that particular way, the boss didn't really tell in our role modeling. You didn't necessarily tell the person what to do.
Hmm.
It was very Chinese, actually. As being a Chinese person, I can say this. You
Well,
told some story that I'm like, what the hell was that
that's
story
right.
about?
Which can drive you nuts when
Yeah.
someone. I
But
mean,
being
actually,
Chinese, I was like, wait, he's trying to tell me something, but he's telling me in a less direct way. Now I have to figure out for myself what is happening.
so actually, where I was starting there was, I wonder if there's some way I can get these two people together in a situation where if they don't cooperate, they're going to really have a problem. And if you could get two people out into a cabin in the woods in the snow and then leave them there, days, either they're going to find a way to get along, and it'll be an awful time for a while, and then they'll find a way to get along, and the problem will be solved, or they won't find a way to get along, and it'll be awful, and you'll know um, one of them's got to go.
Interesting. Right. So in the Wu Wei way, the boss, and the interesting thing in both examples is you as a boss of these two employees in the cabin way, it's like you just go figure it out yourself. I'm not
Hmm?
going to be in between inflicting yet another dynamic
Yeah.
in the middle, because that would be a force, right? Because there's this force that's happening, and then all of a sudden you come on, and then there's like a threesome that wasn't even there before.
Which is a big mistake.
Yeah.
Big mistake. Then it's just magnifies. In terms of being fixed in our ways, so I teach Qigong
Hmm.
as well as meditation. And uh, I love this story of my teacher, Master Wei Liu, just the sweetest woman, and she's a real master
Hmm.
and totally unpretentious, just, helpful.
Hmm.
So there's a particular movement where your two hands have to go in opposite directions.
Hmm.
They're making circles and they're going in opposite
Okay, got
directions.
it. Oh wow, that's hard.
Uh, it's hard. It's hard. And a friend of mine in uh, class was working at it and working at it for 20 minutes. He'd been practicing with it really hard. And Shermu, who we call our teacher, Shermu came by and said, make circles, make circles. And my friend said, I'm trying to make circles. I've been trying to make circles for 25 minutes. And Shermu just said, oh, yes, you're making circles. Very nice circles, just not round.
Because his mind was circling around.
Yeah, well, he was fixed. He was too tight.
Oh.
It's actually kind of interesting if you try to draw a circle and you're tight,
Hmm.
it's very hard to get a smooth circle.
Right.
The only way to get a smooth circle is to just loosen up and let the
Right.
force of the motion take you around smoothly.
Right. I'm tight, so I can't do a full circle right now because my
Right.
shoulder's gonna tight from working out.
Exactly. So Wu Wei is basically finding a way to loosen the the intersections, loosen
Mm.
joints, so that things flow more easily. I have a friend named Anne-Marie Lovins, a very famous person. He built the first house in, I forget if it's Vale or Aspen, back in the 1970s, which has no furnace in it, no heating unit.
Wow.
He can raise bananas in it, but he just designed it in such a way so that it functions ecologically and stays warm.
Right. Right.
And he consults, all over the world on it. And what he says is, you it's nice to add solar panels, it's nice to add extra insulation, but it's better to design the building so that things flow naturally. And one of the ways to do that is if you have pipes which have a right angle in them,
Yes.
and the water is flowing through, they lose heat and they lose efficiency in the right angle. And if you just straighten out the pipe or even just open up the angle so it's less of an acute angle, you gain 30-40% of efficiency.
Wow.
So basically, Wu Wei is just saying, open up, loosen up, facilitate the flow so that it goes in directions that are wholesome. Now, that's sometimes easier said than done.
Right.
But that's the basic idea. And the more you do it, the easier it is to trust that, well, that wasn't what I was intending to have happen, but what's happened, actually, that's a little better than I intended.
Right. And then not being open to whatever the whatever happens, right? You may go back to the cabin and one has killed the other person. Who knows what would have happened?
Which would have been okay.
Yeah, good, bad.
That's right.
Who knows? Right, but so the Wu Wei is not. Wu Wei is not about, okay, you see these two people fighting at work. And so you can look at it and say, this is generally disruptive to the entire organization because these two people are, going at it. And so I think a lot of people would say Wu Wei means don't touch it, just let it be.
Right. That's how it can get misinterpreted, which is why people say, well, if that's what Wu Wei is, why do you keep practicing all the time?
Just do nothing.
Just, whatever, man. And Zen is sometimes thought of as, well, just whatever, just go with the flow.
It is what it is. They're fighting. I can't do anything about it. Just whatever. So But what you said earlier about what Wu Wei is to go, you tune into it, right? So you're tuning into it. And so if you really tuned into it, you said, no, this is there's no harmony here. This is a disharmonious, is that the word? Situation. But then how do you know that you should do something? I mean, in this case, the person is a boss. It could be a mother and a father with a kid, or it could be a kid with two parents that are fighting. How do you know to intercede then? When do you know when to intercede and if you should intercede?
Well, that's a really good question. You probably won't like the answer. Basically, through practice. So I practice Qigong for an hour a day. I practice meditation for about an hour a day. Okay? When you do that, you get to know your body and you get to know your mind. They become familiar to you. And then, let's say I'm practicing Qigong. Oh, and lately I've had some back problems. Okay? Now, the thing with back or any kind of pain problem is, if you just rest, that's not so good for it because you lose muscle tone.
Right. No blood flow.
If you keep on doing what you've been doing, that's not so good for it because it can maintain the inflammation and the problem.
Yes.
So how do you know, as you're doing your exercise, when to continue with it, when to back off and say, no, yes, I'll lose some muscle tone, but I need to let it go for a few days. Same thing with your mind, same thing with your kids. Now, sometimes it's obvious. I mean, obviously, if one kid, takes out a kitchen knife and is running towards the other,
what should I do?
Let's see. Stand going, Wu Wei.
Let me feel into the situation. Yes. Right.
But more often than not, we tend to err too much on the side of doing too much. I mean, that's definitely the modus operandus of our society. No question about it.
Yeah.
And to realize that sometimes problems are caused more by you trying to fix them. I mean, if you're raising kids and the kids are fighting, soon as you try to act as a mediator, oh boy, it's gonna They got to work it out for themselves. One thing that you need to know is what can you actually do? Because we have both inflated ideas of how powerful we are, and we have deflated ideas
Right.
of how powerful we are.
Right.
I mean, in reality, we have a certain amount of leeway and an ability to affect things.
Right.
The current research on parenting says that parents will account for 20%, maybe 30% of how a kid turns out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, you know, that's important, but it's not like if today you serve French fries to your son, that's going to mean that, he's going to turn out to be obese.
Right.
It's not that critical.
Right.
On the other hand, having a generally healthy diet, probably a good idea.
Right. Right.
So knowing when my kids were in their 20s, one of them's 29, one of them's 34 now. They're wonderful women, just wonderful. But as is common with people in their early and mid-20s, it's kind of, what is going on? What is this life? What do I do?
Right.
And they would sometimes call me up and ask for advice.
Mm-hmm.
And, initially I would give advice and they go, oh, no, I can't do that. Or, no, that won't work. I mean, so after a little bit, I realized, I can't live their lives for them.
Yeah.
They have to have certain experience and figure it out for themselves. And at that point, rather than getting anxious when they told me they were having some trouble, what I needed to do was go into myself and go, these are good people. They're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And, I honestly don't know what they should do because life as a 25-year-old now is different than life as a 25-year-old was for me. So basically, I just would listen and say, I don't know what you should do, but I really have faith that whatever you do, you'll figure it out.
Oh, good dad, Ward.
And that was true. You can't say it if you don't believe it.
Yeah.
But it's partially a matter of faith that it's okay. It will work out in some way or another.
Right. Right.
Um,
It's so hard to do. I mean, because we've given examples, like in the parenting example, it's so hard to do. Like, because there have been examples. So if you went going back to knowing when to apply force, and I think probably any Taoist would say never apply force, but I don't know as a parent, because I was talking to my husband, like, I don't know, should we apply force, should we not? And we have a kid who he's actually doing martial art moves all over the house. He took a class a while ago. He's actually quite good at it. He picked it up like that. It would be something that he would enjoy, and he does doing alone. And we said, why don't you take some classes, to get some exercise? No, I don't want to. And I know if I said, what would help you, And I said, how about if Mom took the class with you? He's like, then I would do it, because I don't want to do these group classes. And I said, okay. How about if I take the class with you? And he's like, okay, but I still, okay, but I don't really want to. But yet I know, like with my kids, like with my young eldest son, he did not want to do basketball. And I said, no, you're going to do basketball, because I want you to just try new things. That's what your phase is right now in middle school, is to try new things. And I don't know what it's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. You may love it, you may not love it, but that's what life is about. Try it, see if you like it or not like it, and I'm not going to have you commit to anything beyond that. Just try it. So I forced him to take basketball, and in the end, he loved it. He loved basketball. He wants to play basketball. He wanted to join a rec league. I mean, he loves basketball. So I don't know. So this was an instance when I actually applied force to someone who didn't want to do something, and something good came out of it. Now, would Wu Wei say, no, you applied force where you should have just let him decide?
Not at all. I think what you did there was you kind of let him know what the rules of the universe are.
Okay.
One of the rules of the universe is you can't know what something is like until you actually try it. That's just true.
Yes, that's true. That is true.
A lot of kids don't know that. Um, there's this idea of, I've seen it on TV, so I know it. I don't like that.
Right.
They literally don't know that.
Hmm.
So you went with a rule of the universe, which is what being in accord with the Tao is.
Oh,
You know? So,
fascinating. Wait,
um,
say that again. I think I had a aha, but I didn't get it exactly. So say it again, please.
well,
You went with the rule of the universe,
first,
which is being part of the Tao.
right.
Okay, so if let's say I was the boss in the scenario that we talked about before, who had these employees, and this person, I may be like, I'm I, I don't like conflict. I have conflict with my kids. I don't want to have conflict at work. I don't like conflict. But the rule of the universe is that part of in this corporate universe, it's about having harmony, and that if two
Hmm.
people are causing disharmony, you need to do something because it's affecting in the world of the corporate universe, it's affecting profitability, your effectiveness as a group, ability to get stuff done. Is that considered a rule of the universe, or is that in that context it's a rule of the universe, but that's not being wu wei?
That's not a rule of the universe.
What?
No, that's not. Because some corporations encourage conflict,
Right.
and some corporations encourage cooperation.
Okay.
And either way can work.
Okay.
Um, what I'd say is a rule of the universe, to quote the Tao Te Ching for a moment, is uh, fierce storms blow themselves out.
Hmm.
I mean, you can count on that. Now, if a tornado comes through, it's not going to stay in one spot for the next 5 days. It can wreak tremendous destruction in a few seconds,
Mm-hmm.
but a fierce storm blows itself out. That is a rule of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things to apply in this case is, well, is this a fierce storm? And if so, by tamping it down, are we somehow maintaining it so that we're not allowing it to blow itself out? That's one possibility.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
We just had a big fire near where I live in California, the Rim Fire, and the reason we had such a big fire was we've been suppressing fires for so long that the under.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly enough, when the fire went from the state forests, which had not burnt the underbrush because of lack of funds,
Right.
and and went into Yosemite, it stopped in Yosemite
Mm-hmm.
because they had been burning the underbrush.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. So when there's a fire, the first thing that most people look at is they go, hot, heat,
Right.
flames, and
Put it
smoke.
out. Put it out.
What's
Right.
that? And the first step is it good to let this burn? What's the underbrush like around it? Is someone there, throwing twigs
Right.
onto the fire?
Exactly right. That's true. That could be true in this particular dynamic. There could be someone throwing twigs on the
It
fire.
certainly could be. Um, uh,
So it's really lots of choices, right? And as you said, the way is just kind of tuning into what wants to have happen here.
right,
Two people are fighting. What wants to have happen?
right.
Is it to suppress it? Is it to ignore it? Which sometimes, ignore it meaning just maybe it will burn itself out. If I don't do anything, it will burn itself out. Or let it burn itself out.
Yeah.
Right?
Or sometimes you dig a firewall, or sometimes you cut down the trees in the path of the fire.
Right. So there's not like a particular right way.
No, no.
And it's interesting because I think a lot of people do read this kind of material and say, "Oh, Wu Wei means hands off. Don't do anything, don't interfere, just let things be what they are." But what I'm hearing from you is a very important distinction, which is, tune into what is happening and
That's
act
step
in
one, always.
figure out what the universal principle that is operating here. And then from that point, you have options on things on what to do or not to, right? Like the fire example. Build a
Right.
wall around it, put it out, walk away. It will take care of itself, whatever it is. But I think people use the Tao and things to say, "Oh, walk away."
Right. Right.
It's much easier. It's the easier option, frankly, to just walk away in some ways.
It's the easier option short term, but it usually doesn't work real well long term.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does. Again, knowing when to walk away, knowing when to stay.
Yeah, but I like the idea of figuring out all the different, tuning into what's happening, coming up with the universal principle, and then picking one of those. And it's not as if any of those things may work, frankly, but
Right.
try, experience, and see. And probably a combination, some of them, none of them, who knows?
Exactly.
It's good, bad, who
And
knows?
there's an advantage in tuning in to what's happening
hmm
because when you do that, you can draw on forces that are more powerful than you alone.
What's that mean? Give me an example.
Well, um, I'm trying to think of an example with your uh, two coworkers,
hmm
and it's not coming up immediately. Well, um, actually, here's a very simple example. So I'm a manager. I'm talking to a coworker, one of these workers who's really upset.
Right.
Okay, and as you were playing the part, some part within me is going, oh, and start, no, because these kinds of things are kind of contagious,
Right.
right? So you notice that, and you go, probably not going to be helpful if she's upset for me to get upset as well.
Right.
Okay? And here's where people make a mistake, I think. People say, well, I better relax. And so they say to themselves, relax. Well, that's like saying to yourself, go to sleep, go to
Right.
sleep. The more you say, relax, 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 the less you relax.
Right.
But when you realize you're being drawn into that orbit of tension,
hmm
you can say, okay, I want to open to relaxation. And one of the things you can always do, and this is a Taoist saying, is the earth supports everything without picking and choosing.
Mm.
The sky embraces and enfolds everything without picking and choosing. That means you can always draw on the energy of the earth and always draw on the energy of the sky. And on a very practical standpoint,
Mm.
literally a standpoint, when I'm feeling tense, I check and see whether my feet are parallel and under my shoulders, and I let my weight come down into my feet and let the earth support me because it does.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
um,
So you're literally grounding your body so that
yeah,
you feel supported by the earth. And do you go the step beyond that, which is okay, so now that I'm in, were you saying now go into the level of okay, what does the earth, what's wisdom, what is the universal principle that the earth and from the stable place has to offer me? Like if I think about the earth and I use it as a universal principle,
right.
what is happening?
Well,
Do you go there or do you just saying get grounded?
um, getting grounded takes you there automatically.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that I consciously say, okay, what's the earth saying? What's the sky saying? But I will, once I align with heaven and earth, which is what the Tao is about,
Right.
basically, once I align, I kind of check in and say to myself, okay, what now?
Hmm.
And if something comes up, I'll do that. And if something doesn't come up, I'll go, I don't know what to do now.
Hmm.
That being the case, maybe I shouldn't do anything at this moment and give it a little time. I mean, duh.
That's so hard for us,
That
though, right?
concept.
That's so hard for us to do in practice because we want to do something. Well, then do something.
That's right. And
I
that's
don't know. I
that's
don't know.
what you
Figure
feel
out. Do
powerless. You
something.
feel like, hey, if I don't do something right now, I'll be powerless. I'll be an awful manager, or this
Right.
situation will, blossom. You go, well, maybe an hour from now,
Right.
because this is just true. How many times have you tried to think of a word and you couldn't think of it and you couldn't think
hmm
of it and you let it go and an hour later goes, oh, I know what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Something pops up.
Right.
Someone says something in another conversation, and you suddenly go, oh, those two people.
Right.
Right. I didn't realize we can just do this.
Right.
It's amazing when you open up the channels, stuff comes through.
Interesting. So, in the example, whether it's your kids that are in conflict, yourself with another person, yourself against yourself, right?
Yes,
Which we have those things too, right?
yes,
You're abusing yourself, like, oh, I don't know why I'm so stupid, whatever,
absolutely.
whatever it is, right?
That helps a lot, right?
But it's about kind of tuning into what is it? So, tuning in. What is the universal principle? But I'm hearing almost a step before that. First ground yourself.
That's
Connect both to heaven and earth. And
that's
in that process alone, it'll be easy to tune into something that's not just
yeah,
you.
exactly.
Figure out the universal principle. Use that universal principle in ways of, do you have an answer? It could be that you use that universal principle, you get nothing, or in the example that you gave with the fire, you had five viable solutions of things you could do to put out the fire,
Right.
and
I'd
then
be
go from there.
careful, I'd be careful about the word use,
Okay.
which is again what we tend to think of. How can I make use of this?
Right.
Um, accord with the principle.
Uh, how can
Um,
I work in according to principle?
right. The principle here is basically we want the company to work.
Right.
And I need to support my family and eat, and we're all human beings. And who knows how that's going to play out?
Right.
But when you try to use the Tao,
Right.
and something happens when we, grab it and mold it. There's a
Hmm.
famous story from Zhuangzi, which I really love. I put in the book. So Chuangzu is comes to a village, and he sees this beautiful tree, and he says, "Oh, what a wonderful tree!" And the villager says, "Ah, it's awful, it's useless. I mean, you burn it, it stinks.
Hmm.
You try to build with everything just shatters. It's nothing you can do. It's useless." And Chuangzu looks at the villager, and says, "Hmm. Sounds like if it had been useful, you would have cut it down a long time ago."
Hmm. Interesting. Love that. All right, we need to wrap up, but I have to say, walking the way. So here's what happened. I was so stressed out yesterday. I had about 1,000 things that I was doing, and I thought, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to read this book, which is actually probably the worst way to enter into the Tao, right? But I did that. I read the book, and you know what? It was like having a cup of warm tea.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you learned something or found something that you'd like to try out. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.